With all his concentration, a young man carefully yet determinedly swings his axe at a tree. The tree shakes, waking up the birds perched upon its leaves. Einar, a tall 20-year-old young man with reddish-brown hair and brown eyes, smiles as the axe cuts deep into the trunk of a tree. Out of nowhere, a knife comes flying into him, and its handle hits him on the head. The expertly thrown knife came from a well-built middle-aged woman bearing multiple dishes and spoons. Einar's mother. Einar angrily yells at his mother, but his mother just angrily yells back. She asks him why he's trying to cut a tree down so near to their house, when it might fall over and destroy their only dwelling. A young girl then comes near the two bearing food and asks Einar if he wants to be a woodcutter. The young girl is Lotta, Einar's younger sister. Einar explains to the two that he is training for battle and proudly shows them how deep the axe he swung had cut into the tree. Unfortunately, his mother just snorts at him, telling him that he might be a big lad, but he'd be useless in battle. The three then head to the nearby table and prepare to take a break from their farm and work and have lunch. During lunch, his mother asks Einar why he suddenly took up training again. Einar tells her that he just wants to protect their place. The past wars had ravaged their land, leaving nothing but ruins and ashes. But now they have finally rebuilt, and he won't let anything bad happen to their farm anymore. Einar was about to reminisce about his father's death when he was interrupted by his sister's scream of delight from the fresh milk. His sister and mother start gossiping about the milk, leaving Einar stewing in frustration. He tries to get their attention, but his mother just dissuades his fear of war. His mother advises him to not mind all the warrior stuff. Einar is puzzled. Their father died protecting their farm from invaders, but his mother doesn't seem frustrated that they are always on the losing side. His mother just reminds him that thanks to their father they are alive. They were able to rebuild and restart their farm. Moreover, Einar is now eating a delicious meal with two beautiful ladies. They really haven't lost at all. Einar ponders his mother's words as he gazes across the countryside, from their neighbors tilling the land to the kids playing along the path. However, a few months later, their land is once again under attack. The raiding party mercilessly put the houses on fire, stole their crops, and slaughtered their defenseless neighbors. Einar, his sister Lotta, and their mother can only helplessly watch while hiding in the bushes as the raiders destroy their home. Despite the gruesome scene in front of them, Einar's mother quickly makes a plan to escape from the marauders. She tells her children that when they reach the nearby forest, they will run. Their mother then notices that her daughter, Lotta, had started to hyperventilate because of the dreadful situation they are now in. Their mother puts on a brave face, smiles at her daughter, and strokes her hair while reassuring her that her brother and mother will be right behind her. When the marauders' backs are turned, the family starts to run toward the forest. They were able to run a good distance when an arrow abruptly hit their mother's back and she fell. Einar screams for his mother as she struggles to breathe. His scream alerts Lotta, who comes running back for them. Einar tries to lift his mother up, but she just groans in pain and falls again. She has no strength left to stand up. Einar kneels his dying mother as she whispers for him to take his sister and run without her. However, Einar doesn't want to leave his dying mother. Lotta also kneels near her mother and cries as she hugs her. From the distance, three marauders finally catch sight of them and start walking toward them. They are particularly delighted when they see that one of them is a girl. Seeing the approaching bandits, their mother gathers her strength and punches Einar in the chest. She pulls him closer and screams at him to stand up and take his sister away from there. As long as they are alive, they shouldn't give up. His mother finally runs out of strength and lets go of Einar. With her dying breath, she whispers her children's names and passes away, leaving a traumatized Einar and Lotta. The marauders finally catch up to the two siblings and puzzlingly look at them since they aren't running away. Noticing his sister, one of the marauders pulls her up by the arm and starts carrying her back to the village. Lotta starts struggling and crying for her brother, but she proves no match for the huge warrior carrying her. Lotta's struggles and cries finally wake Einar out of his shock. He brandishes his axe, prepared to fight for his sister. He tries to swing at them, but a simple hit to the face knocks him back, blood dripping out of his nose. Seeing her brother bleeding on the ground, Lotta pulls one of her hair clips and jams it right into the back of the marauder carrying her. The marauder drops her to the ground, with Lotta instantly glaring and shouting at the marauder. However, her voice was cut short when the marauder's axe slashes across her body, killing her instantly. The other marauders start scolding the guy for killing one of their prisoners, but they just decide to take Einar and sell him. They hold Einar and drag him back to the burning village. Einar can only struggle in rage and frustration as he slowly gets dragged farther and farther from his family's bodies. With all his strength, he screams, but nothing changes as the blackness consumes him. A few days later, a lifeless Einar is sitting on a boat. They are currently being transported across the sea while the storm rages outside. A coughing fit interrupts his thoughts and he sees a fellow prisoner curled up on the floor sick. Their captors check her status and conclude that she won't survive the journey. To Einar's shock, they carry the woman outside towards the side of the boat and over the railing into the turbulent waters below. Einar runs in an attempt to stop them, but he can only watch as the woman's hand struggles to float but slowly sinks underneath the waves. In anger, he screams at his captors, telling them they didn't have to throw her overboard, but they just punch him in the chest. After confirming that the punch didn't get swollen, his captor then goes back to the other captives and starts passing blankets around. He forbids them from getting sick until they are rightfully bought as a slave. Outside, Einar watches the storm while contemplating his life. However, he remembers his mother's words about him needing to live and decides to survive. A few days later, they finally reach the shore and they were able to disembark from the boat. Their captors then thoroughly feed them and giving them wine to ensure that their skin and face have better color. They also bathe in the rivers, carefully checking and removing lice from their hair. The captive girls also get their hair styled and makeup put on their faces to make them look younger. All of this is so that they would look better for potential buyers looking for slaves. They then line them up with the buyers that pass in front of them, checking their teeth and muscles. When his captors are momentarily distracted by a buyer, Einar decides to make a run for it. He gets out of line and runs into the forest, deciding that he'll run away and start a new life, just like his mother had said. He runs throughout the day until the afternoon. While resting for a while under a tree, his stomach grumbles in hunger. In desperation, he finds a nearby storehouse and enters it, stealing some bread inside. He stops when he hears a girl entering carrying a pail of water, and Einar immediately runs away apologizing while the girl shouts thief at him. Unfortunately, he runs straight into his captors riding a horse, who smile at him and tell him he still doesn't get his situation. Einar can only glare in defiance as they drag him back to the slave market. They bring Einar back all beaten up and warn the other slaves not to attempt running away anymore. Their homes are far away, far away. No matter how much they struggle, they're never going back to them. And naturally, no one's going to help them escape since they are outsiders and penniless slaves. As such, they should just find a good master and serve him as best they can. If they do that, they'll eat better than if they had ran away and end up being a beggar. Before they run off, they should think really hard about which future is better. With their captive's harsh yet truthful speech, the captives start crying, finally accepting that they are really slaves. That night, Einar also gets whipped repeatedly across his back for trying to run away, with Einar only holding on to consciousness by repeating his mantra, "I have to live." After a few days, Einar is back to being inspected as a slave by potential buyers. He understands and accepts that what his captor had said was true. Running away is futile, and he should just work hard for his future master who might even grant him his freedom. Different potential buyers come and go. Some are looking for cuter slaves, while others are just complaining that they are all second-rate slaves. A little while later, his captor leads an old man telling him that they just got a fresh batch, and he found the slave he was looking for. His captor then leads the old man to Einar. The old man stares at Einar, but loudly shouts at the captor for leading him to the wrong slave. The old man had been looking for a small young man with blonde hair named Thorfinn, and Einar clearly doesn't look like him. However, his captor just keeps selling Einar to him, saying that he's strong and tough. The old man just reiterates that he's not here to buy a worker. He is looking for his relative and wants to buy his freedom back. The old man is certain that his relative passed through that town, but when the captor didn't recognize his description, the old man just sighs in sadness. He then apologizes to Einar and leaves. In Einar's mind, he imagines Thorfinn to be a very lucky guy to have such a loving relative looking for him. Another potential buyer then stops at Einar. He expertly checks Einar's teeth, his gums, and his build. He also asks for Einar's name, which Einar politely gives. He also asks Einar where he's from and what he was doing before he was captured. Einar answers that he was a former farmer from northern England. Finding everything satisfactory, the buyer puts his hand on his hips, smiles, and asks Einar if he wants to help out at his farm. The question sends Einar back through his memories, and when his hands were working the soil. As such, Einar follows his master to his farm. After a short boat ride, they were finally able to reach it. Since the other workers are still working, his master promises to introduce him at dinner. Meanwhile, Einar stared slack-jawed and amazed at the rows and rows of golden wheat stretching as far as the eye could see. It's his master's farm. The view reminds him of his own farm and of his smiling mom and sister. Remembering the conversation they had during that fateful lunch, Einar asks his mom in his head if what she said back then is still true. Has he still not lost? Einar's master heads to a nearby forest while Einar dutifully follows. His attitude is now to faithfully serve the master that brought him. As long as he's an obedient slave, he won't starve. Meanwhile, when they reach the forest, Einar's master starts shouting into the woods for his other slave, Thorfinn. A small young boy with blonde hair exits the forest with an axe on his shoulders. Thus, Einar and Thorfinn finally meet.